Happy to have you along. We are joined as always by Greg Engert, beer director for the neighborhood restaurant group, a food and wine sommelier of the year. The group includes Church Key downstairs from there, Birch and Barley, also the Partisan and Red Apron in Penn Quarter. Greg, it is always good to see you.
See you too.
What do we have on tap this week?
So this week we have another incredible small batch bottle re-fermented Belgian style beer from Allagash Brewing Company, our friends up in Portland, Maine. This is called Century Ale, and it is new to the market. See when we taste this, really cool beer, 8% alcohol, but this beer has taken quite a bit of time to get there. It's been fermented with a blend of kind of traditional farmhouse ale or saison yeast, ale yeast, and Brettanomyces, that yeast that produces some funky wild flavors, for 2 years in stainless steel. So we don't get a lot of oak character obviously here, a little bit cleaner on the palate, but 2 years of fermentation there gets it up to 8%. Then they dry hop it with some new German and new American varieties of hop.
Very inviting in the nose.
It's great. Delicious.
Very good, yes.
Dry without being super bitter. And that's the thing. When you set Brettanomyces and yeast upon sugars in beer for 2 years, they're going to clean this thing out. So, I mean, this is bone dry. There's no fermentable sugar probably left in this at all. You get a little bit of a kind of piquant acidity there, but nothing that's like lactic or tart, really. And in the nose, you notice, you're saying how inviting it is. It's got this really cool, there's a hint of that funky Brett quality, but nothing that's too overwhelming. And then the hops are really nicely added. The varieties they're using, there's 2 German varieties that are new. One's called Mandarina Bavaria, and that gives you kind of tangerine notes in the nose. The other's called Hallertau Blanc, and that's a kind of white wine-ish hop. And then 2 American hops. One's just called number 6300, I think, and then the other one's Equinox, and they're giving you a little bit more of that big, bold American fruit characteristic as well.
I just don't think I've ever had anything quite like this that's balanced the way it is. I can't describe it, but and if I have, it's
subtle too.
Very rare. I don't know how to put my finger on it other than the dryness you mentioned. That's something else.
What I love about it, and to your point, is that simplicity is king today in many ways. You know, last week we tasted a beer that was aged in bourbon barrels, almost 10% alcohol, cherries added, much more sour from Avery, a delicious beer, the Insula sour beer. But then you can have a beer that took 2 years to make, and yet it's delicate and it's subtly nuanced. You know, I think sometimes we associate, if it takes 2 years to make, it's going to be 15% alcohol, or you know what I mean, or like
and sludgy
and really huge or whatever.
I mean,
but it's just so cool now is that this beer takes 2 years to taste this way. To get this exact dryness and subtle complexity took 2 years, and I love that in American brewing and nowadays we're willing to wait 2 years to get these delicate flavors. I think it's fantastic.
For people who are new to craft beer, and we get more of them every day, why is this corked and caged? Why couldn't you put this in a can?
Right.
Or would
you could put it? You could, yeah. So that's the thing is you can do anything you want to do with these beers at any time. So imagine over 2 years' time, or any amount of time, as fermentation occurs, you get natural buildup of carbon dioxide because that's a byproduct of the yeasts converting of sugar to alcohol and making flavors. But that CO2 is necessarily going to dissipate over time. I mean, particularly if you go into barrel, the beer's going to go flat, or even in a stainless tank, over time, it's not going to have its own CO2. So you have 2 choices to revive the beer, right? You could bring it down to a tank and force carbonate it, like you would soda, or most beers out there are force carbonated, to give it a certain kind of carbonation that I would call a little bit sharper, bigger bubbles, you know, think of like soda water.
Yeah.
Or you can re-ferment in bottle by adding a little bit of sugar, a little bit of yeast, corking and caging because there's going to be a buildup of CO2 pressure, so you want to be able to handle that. Same thing we do with like champagne or brut wine. And then what you get, instead of that kind of big, bold carbonation of forced carbonation, you get this kind of delicious, creamy carbonation. It's a smaller bead, a bubble. It's better on the palate, I think, in a lot of ways. It's round and creamy and gentle and tantalizing. And then in the nose, it's got this full aromatic possibility. And then this beer should be drank fresh because of its dry hopping, but a lot of beers that are corked and caged are going to develop over time. A little bit of oxidation will come in, and you could argue that the cork versus cap assists with that as well.
What would you pair this with? Rich food?
Yeah, I think so. The first thing I think of is like if I went to like Bistro de Coin in DC or like Le Diplomat or some kind of classic French bistro, I'd hope that they have something akin to this, if not this. I think this would be great with really thick, rich French food, you know, like for anything from pâtés to rillettes to foie, but also rich sauces. I could see those being really great. And then I think I mentioned this a few episodes back, but I've been really loving saisons, dry saisons particularly that aren't too bitter, with Thai food. I eat a lot of Thai takeout, and this has got the, this fits up nicely with the spice, lemongrass, ginger, cilantro, chili you find in like drunken noodles or pad Thai.
How about a rich Hungarian goulash? Am I going off the map there? Something?
No, I think
thick,
I think it can work.
Beef.
It's even got a little bit of that acid, could go well with something that's tomato based too. If it's too big, it might get a little bit lost. But I think rich is like you could do this with like a nice macaroni and cheese too. You know, if you want to go the stew way. So.
All right, well, Allagash does it again. Greg, thank you as always.
Thank you.
Everyone, please always do drink responsibly, and be sure to bring your thirst next time for another beer of the week.